This is the Lomography Sprocket Rocket, and it is by far my favorite film camera. I ordered the Sprocket Rocket last September and it took a couple days to arrive. However, I eventually got it and started unboxing it. The box is pretty large given the size of the camera, but the extra space is taken up with some paper, and then under that is the Sprocket Rocket's packaging, which is pretty cool. The packaging is really cool, but it took me a bit of work to get it out. I had to pull on these flaps, which was pretty intuitive, but it took a lot of force to get the camera in that section free. Under the camera is the lens cap, and then I continued working on getting the camera out. It took a bit of work. I probably could have done it better, but there's the camera. And then under the camera, they had some pamphlets and some information about the camera. So the lens cap comes in this little plastic thing, which is pretty easy to remove it from, and then the lens cap just goes over the front of the Sprocket Rocket, and it holds on pretty well and protects it very well. This booklet that came with it is this really cool book, and it has like some comics about lomography in the Sprocket Rocket, and it also has some really cool photos that were taken with a Sprocket Rocket. The second book has a link to a getting started guide and some more information, and the third piece is this like poster, which is pretty cool. It has some photos and it also has a lot of information about the Sprocket Rocket on it. Inside of the Sprocket Rocket, it comes with a frame and a little bit of information about it. It doesn't expose the sprocket holes on a photo, however I really love how that looks, so I removed it. Loading the Sprocket Rocket is pretty easy, but it's even easier when you're not trying to film. The first step is removing the back door. I'm going to load in some Fujifilm 400. It's about 5 years expired. Start by pulling up on the film rewinding wheel. This locks into the film and allows you to rewind it. Then you can slide the film into its little compartment on the left. Once that is in the camera, push down on the film rewinding knob so that way it locks into the film canister. Then pull the film across. There's a little notch in the film advancing wheel, and then you just turn that. Instead of a traditional viewfinder, the Sprocket Rocket has a lens on top of the camera that gives you an idea of what you're shooting. The viewfinder on the Sprocket Rocket is honestly pretty unique compared to the viewfinder on a lot of cameras, so I designed this 3D printed attachment which connects to the cold shoe of the Sprocket Rocket and then goes over the lens of my camera, so that way I can film what I'm seeing through the viewfinder whenever I take a photo. Because this isn't an optical viewfinder, what you see isn't the exact photo that you're taking, but it's still pretty close. There aren't any guides, so what is in frame and what isn't in frame isn't an exact science, and you don't really know until you get the photos developed. The Sprocket Rocket is pretty Spartan when it comes to settings. This makes it pretty fun to shoot with, as there isn't a lot that you have to think about. The Sprocket Rocket uses a zone focusing lens, which gives you the options of 1 meter to infinity and 0.6 meters to 1 meter, and there is this tiny notch that shows which setting it is on. For the shutter speeds, there is normal, which is 1/100th of a second, and bulb, which is unlimited. When it comes to the aperture, there's the option between cloudy and sunny, which is pretty easy to switch between, and that's f10.8 and f16 respectively. The settings for the Sprocket Rocket were chosen very intelligently by Lomography, as you can get some great photos in the sun and in some cloudy conditions. However, it is not good at indoor or any kind of low light photography. The wide angle lens makes it super easy to capture amazing looking landscapes. When I first used the Sprocket Rocket, a lot of my photos were underexposed, as the cloudy aperture is 10.8, which is still pretty closed down. I actually have 2 Sprocket Rockets, however only one of them works. Shortly after I got my first Sprocket Rocket, I noticed there was an issue with the shutter where it wouldn't fully open and sometimes would actually get stuck open, which is a really big issue with film cameras. So I contacted Lomography support, and they were able to sort it out and send me a new Sprocket Rocket pretty quickly, which I'm very thankful for. You can see when I try to push the shutter open, it only opens partially, which was a big issue. This is the second Sprocket Rocket that I got, and running the same test by pushing on the shutter button, you can see that the shutter opens for a very short period of time, which is what the camera is meant to do, so that is very great to see. I was on a hike and my Sprocket Rocket fell because the little part that you clip a strap into broke. The exterior survived pretty well. There's a small dent, however, on the interior. The film rewinding knob got knocked out of alignment. The spool has two parts, this like main spindle where the film clips into, and then this bottom part that slides into the camera and holds the spindle in place. It took a lit of negotiating with the parts, but eventually I was able to get everything to slide into place, and it looks pretty firm, which is really nice, and it spins well. Luckily, I was able to recover the part, and this little metal piece is the culprit, as it must have flexed open enough to just fall out, which is an issue. However, it shouldn't be too hard to fix. On top of the Sprocket Rocket, there are two holes. The one on the right is used to count how many photos have been taken. The one on the left tells you when you should take a photo. Now, when I drop my Sprocket Rocket, the film counter set itself to 0, which is concerning. To make sure that nothing was broken, I removed the small assembly, which has the film counter wheel. Luckily, nothing was damaged. I think it reset to 0 because whatever holds the wheel from rotating must have disengaged long enough for the spring to take over, setting it back to 0. This is a really cool view of the interior, and it also shows that the film counting wheel only operates when the back door is closed, and that there is nothing connecting the shutter to the film advance. The Sprocket Rocket is great for taking double exposure photos. After verifying that everything internally is fine, I'm going to put it back into the Sprocket Rocket body and screw it in. Getting the little metal piece back into this screw part is straightforward conceptually. However, you do have to mess with the metal a little bit in order to get it to snap back into place. Now that everything is fixed, the first step to removing the film is just pulling up on the film rewinding knob, and I'm going to drop this off at a film lab to get it developed. I got my film scans back, and there were some light leaks, and I think that happened when the camera fell, which for a lot of people might not be the most desirable. However, I think a lot of these photos turned out really cool, and on the tops of a lot of photos you can see the outline of other sprockets. Overall, I am a very big fan of this camera. So far, I've shot 4 rolls of film on it, and I plan on shooting many more. The Sprocket Rocket's panoramic aspect ratio, as well as exposing the sprocket holes on the top and bottom of the film, is super unique, and I love how it looks. While at times the lack of shutter and aperture control can be a little bit annoying, it is sometimes very nice to just not have to think about that, to just set it to sunny, normal, and just take photos of things that look interesting. Another side effect of its simplicity is that it's really great for taking dual exposure photos, and I haven't messed with that a lot yet, but I really want to in the future. It's currently being sold on Lomography's website for $79, which is an insanely great price. Lomography has also been incredibly responsive whenever I've had issues, and incredibly helpful in resolving those issues. Overall, I'm a very big fan of this camera and absolutely am happy with my purchase. Thank you all for watching that video. If you liked it, hit that like button. If you didn't like it, dislike it, but tell me why in the comments down below. If you want to see more of my videos, hit that subscribe button. And as always, keep on making.